And welcome back to Broader Financial Future, aka BFF. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing day so far. And here's to everyone growing their portfolio, building wealth over time. Now, today's going to be a pretty good video. I'm going to talk about dividend ETF to consider for your portfolio. Now, if you don't know, an ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. An ETF is simply a basket of stocks that follows or attempts to copy a specific benchmark or index. So you don't want to miss today's video, so stay tuned. And just a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only, and any investment may involve risks. So it's important that we always do our homework when we invest in anything. So let's jump into today's video. Now today I want to talk about some of the best ETFs to invest in when it comes to a dividend ETF. And the first ETF I'm going to discuss is SPDR Portfolio S&P 500 High Dividend ETF. The ticker is SPYD. You can pretty much find these on Robinhood, Fidelity, Webull. So if you have any of those brokerage accounts, then pretty much the majority of them should have this. You can find it by using that ticker. Now, if you're new to investing, I do have links at the bottom of my video for Robinhood, M1 Finance, and Webull. So let's jump in and talk about SPYD. Now, SPYD tracks an index of the 80 highest yielding stocks selected from the S&P 500. So basically, out of the S&P 500, they're tracking the top 80 with the highest yielding stocks. So that's basically their goal when it comes to this particular ETF. That's what they're trying to accomplish. Now, this one is actually a State Street ETF, and it was started in October of 2015. So it's a relatively new ETF compared to the other two I'm going to discuss. Now, this one does have an expense ratio of 0.07%. Basically, an expense ratio is kind of like now basically, if you don't know what an expense ratio is, it's basically the fees that kind of cover the ETF. Kind of like the admin fees, the operating expenses that some ETFs have or index funds, basically to manage that particular ETF or index fund. Now, this one has a nice yield of 4.5% and they pay a quarterly dividend. So that's one of the great things when it comes to this particular ETF. Now, let's look at some of their top holdings. Now, some of their top holdings when it comes to this particular ETF is Regency Centers Corporation, Iron Mountain, among others. So those are some of their top 10 holdings when it comes to this particular ETF. Now, when we break down their industry or sector, they're heavily invested in the financial sector. Next comes energy, utilities, consumer cyclicals, and consumer non-cyclicals, and basic materials and technology for a lesser degree. So when you're investing in this particular ETF, you're kind of getting like a broad sector of the market, and those are some of the top 10 companies as well that this particular ETF covers. Now, the next ETF on my list is Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. Now, the ticker, it's going to be SCHD. So when you're trying to find it, that's the ticker you look for. Now, SCHD tracks a market cap weighted index of 100 dividend paying US equities. So it's slightly different from SPYD. They're really tracking based off market cap. So that's one of the main differences from SPYD. Also, this is actually issued by Charles Schwab. If you don't know, Charles Schwab actually has a brokerage account as well, so it can actually, it's kind of like Fidelity or a Robinhood as well. Now, this one right here, their inception started in October of 2011. Seemed like they're all in the same month of October, but this one is actually a little bit, it's been around a little bit longer than SPDR. Now, it also has a lower expense ratio of 0.06%. Now, the dividend is a little bit lower at 2.72%, and they do offer a quarterly distribution when it comes to this particular ETF. Now, when it comes to some of the top 10 holdings, you're going to get major companies like the Home Depot, Texas Instruments, IBM, Pfizer, Pepsi, Cisco. So as you can see, it does have some of the different holdings in their top 10 in this particular portfolio. And when we look at, let's see here, some of their major sectors, they're heavily in financials, but technology comes in second in this particular ETF. Also industrials, consumer non-cyclicals, healthcare, and so forth. This one kind of focuses on those particular companies a little bit more heavier in industries and sectors. So that's something to be aware of, depending on what you want to buy, what you want to get into. Right now, that's how this one is operated. Now, when we look at let's look at some of their ratings. This one actually has an A, and it has a 5-star from Morningstar. So that's something to be aware of when it comes to this particular ETF, and something to consider. Now, last but not least, when it comes to my top 3 picks, when it comes to dividends and ETF, is Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF shares, and the ticker is going to be VYM. Now, VYM, the index selects high dividend paying U.S. companies, excluding REITs, and weighs them by market cap. So that's a key factor when it comes to this particular ETF. Now, the issuer to this particular one is actually Vanguard, which is another solid company. Basically, very similar to Charles Schwab, both high quality, high value names to invest with as well. Now, this is actually the oldest out of the bunch. Now, this particular ETF was established in 2006, and it does have an expense ratio the same as SCHD of 0.06%. Which is fairly low, and it has a dividend yield of 2.86%. And this is actually another quarterly paying dividend, so basically you get your dividends every quarter. Now, when it comes to some of the top companies in this particular ETF, you're going to find JP Morgan Chase, Johnson & Johnson, Home Depot, Procter & Gamble, just to name a few. So you got a lot of quality companies on this list for the most part. In addition to that, they're heavily into the financial sector, consumer non-cyclicals, healthcare, and so forth. So you kind of see the sectors and the industries that they're kind of focused and highlighting on when it comes to this particular ETF. This one has a FactSet rating of an A and a Morningstar rating of 4 out of 5 stars. Overall, they're all great ETFs to consider to kind of add to your portfolio if you want to add a little bit of diversification when it comes to picking individual dividend ETFs. So instead of picking one dividend company, these ETFs gives you a chance to diversify, where you're not trying to pick that one. You're going to get a little bit of everything. So that way, if one company cuts their dividend, it's not going to affect you as much as having one particular stock like AT&T, for example. So that's the great thing about ETFs. It allows you that flexibility to be invested in more than one particular company. And ETFs is a great way to kind of start your dividend journey and also be diversified. Let me know, do you own any of these particular ETFs when it comes to dividend ETFs? If not, what are some of your favorite dividend ETFs out there in the market? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Don't forget to smash the like button. And if you're interested, I do have links below for Robinhood, Webull, and M1 Finance. Depending on when you sign up, sometimes they give promotional offers at the bottom. In addition, if you like to keep track of your financial investments, I do have a link to a journal that you can purchase that really helps out the channel as well. And until next time, everybody, peace.